Welcome back, and if you're just joining us, this is Seven's continuing coverage of the Queensland flood disaster. Our reporter Peter Doherty is in the 7 News chopper over Brisbane this evening. Pete, residents have seen 2 river peaks today. How's the city looking tonight?
Good evening, Chris. It's looking very dark, and that is because large areas of Brisbane still have water in them and still have power disconnected. This is the Milton and Toowong area, very close to town. All those houses are blacked out. The only bright light there, the flashing bright lights, that's actually the 4X brewery. They must have internal generators because they're back on. They're certainly not in business because they've been inundated with water. But it is still very dark in Brisbane, and of course that means many people have not seen this flood disaster on their own TVs. People around the rest of the nation have been glued and watching and are seeing it, but for many people who are experiencing it, who are knee-deep in it, no power, they haven't seen the big picture of what's going on.
Now, authorities were hoping to restore power to some homes tonight, weren't they, Pete?
Absolutely. There's around 103,000 homes still without power. They're hoping another 33,000 will be connected tonight, and that will keep rolling through until the morning. Now, we're looking at the central business district. It's still, it's not business as usual. Water is still receding from those streets. I just spoke to the Bureau a moment ago. It's going down at the rate of around 20 centimetres every 2 hours. So let's say 10 centimetres an hour. That's the rate it's dropping. They expect that will continue throughout the night, and that will be the projection for the next couple of days. But as we pan across the southern suburbs of Brisbane, the bright lights of the highways, the river you'll see still meandering through town, and there are huge chunks of water still out there in the suburbs.
I guess usually at this time of night too in Brisbane, you'd expect to see a fair few more cars in the streets down there. Obviously, many of those still blocked.
They are, Barthy, and the road crews are going around town selectively opening those roads that are okay. Also going out on the suburbs there are people getting in, they're ripping out the water, the wasted, the damaged, the ruined possessions they have. We've already seen those starting to be stacked out on the streets out towards the Ipswich area, and that will be a sight repeated right across town. Now, the other big thing is all the water that's arrived in Brisbane came through the Lockyer Valley, the farming community, and it's scoured off metres and metres of rich brown soil. Expect to see that brown soil, you know, layered and layered through these homes in Brisbane. Unlike the other parts of Queensland where the flood came up and down, I think you're going to see a lot more mud here once the water level does go down.
All right, thanks for that, Peter. Peter Doherty, high over Brisbane in the 7 News chopper, giving us an evening view of that city tonight. We'll go now to Sunrise weather presenter Grant Denyer. He's been out amongst it today. He spent a fair amount of time the past few days in Brisbane's riverside suburb of Milton. Grant, today you've had a boat tour of some of the flooded suburbs.
Yeah, I think some of the strongest memories I think I'm going to live with for quite some time, actually. Very, very rare and unique experience to be sort of on the river, if you like, as it starts engulfing a suburb. It was really quite spooky to be standing there with residents sort of aware that their houses were in the direct line of fire, but to which extent they weren't sure. So being on the water, you got to see them sort of fight to the very end, chance it out, stay as long as they could, and then realise that the water levels were a little higher than they expected. There were plenty of people that didn't quite believe that we would reach the heights that were actually forecast. So they were then caught out the front of their houses. We're seeing them putting the furniture up within the windows, trying to get them up out of the ground and out of the way as much as we could. River heights that became so frighteningly high, we ended up using sort of our sound equipment to sort of push the power lines up for us to slip underneath. So, you know, really sort of raw and extraordinary stuff as it started to bear down and swallow up the suburb. Right behind us at the moment, in fact, Chris, we're just noticing that actually surf life-saving crews have come to bring the Energex crews into secluded, hard-to-reach areas. They're using their surf boats at the moment with a crew just inside Suncorp Stadium to try and restore power for the entire Milton region and, of course, Suncorp. after those famous scenes that we saw where it's not just a footy field or a concert ground for U2 or Bon Jovi, but we saw a canoe paddling in the middle of the football field just a little earlier on. So that surf life saving crew, Chris, actually just grabbed a whole heap of kegs as well from the area and towed them in and away from the electrical equipment. The debris here is amazing. Water tanks from houses just strewn right across the roads here. So it's still action all stations at the moment.
Grant, you mentioned just earlier how low power lines are purely because of those really high water levels. How much of a danger do they pose for those crews behind you in those surf life saving boats, particularly in the dark?
Yeah, well, there's about 15 odd Etijex guys here. So this is a major substation for the entire suburb and surrounding streets. So it's a big one. You know, there's been sort of a lot of talk about either the fire that they didn't or didn't have inside the area and some underwater shenanigans where the water was mixing with the power and causing some problems. So they're trying to restore that now. They're going very delicately, very slowly. So having the surf life savers here, giving them boat access is their first opportunity to actually come in and also take a good look within the area. So I think it's going to be quite a slow process. You don't want to mess with power and water, and of course that's the strong message that everybody's trying to reinforce to homeowners. Don't dive straight back in. If your house is still underwater, and there are so many of them still underwater, don't forget there are contaminants in them, whether it be oil, whether it be electricity, whether it be a mixture of sewage as well, and plus just the danger of just general health, really. So we want the water to subside before people start to go back in and start that recovery process, which we know is going to be long and painful, Chris. All
right, Grant, thanks for joining us. Sunrise weatherman Grant Denyer joining us from the flooded Brisbane suburb of Milton there. We'll go to a break and we'll be back with more right after this. Welcome back to Seven's continuing coverage of the Queensland flood disaster. A helicopter pilot involved in the rescue of people from their rooftops in the hard-hit Lockyer Valley has told how he tried in vain to save more stranded residents. Today, onboard video was released showing his heroic team in action.
This is how the crew of the EMQ rescue helicopters saw the wave of destruction which swept through the Lockyer Valley. Senior pilot Mark Kempton at the controls as his team searched and prayed to find life. Then a family is spotted, 5 of them on the roof of a house. Hovering over a murky, churning broth, rescuers swiftly drop, plucking each person from danger and loading them on board. 2 little boys, 3 women. Then it's off next door to save a woman clinging to a tree, a man in the water clutching the gutter of his roof. Person after person, house after house. A mission that rescuers thought would never stop. Today, senior pilot Kempton could reflect, recalling the traumatised faces in the back of his helicopter.
And I looked over my shoulder in between flights and people were just there in shock, you know, and stunned horror, I think, about what had happened and the realisation that they've been saved.
He spoke of a woman who'd had her child torn from her arms before he could reach her, and of others he couldn't get to at all.
It's just a heartbreaking thing. It doesn't matter how many people, you know, you save. What you do, you always want to just get someone else, one more, you know, you want to get everyone, you know, and you just can't.
Jeffrey Hook was one of those he saved.
I might have had a chance to swim out on my own, but not with my wife, she can't swim. The house washed over onto a tree and I got her out into that and I got up on the roof to get the helicopters to come.
He lost his 3 dogs, birds and chooks and hasn't slept since.
Little buggers.
But he has his life and is grateful.
It's a good die young, I'll be here for a long bloody time.
Captain Kempton wants to catch up with Jeff and all the other survivors.
I'd love to have a time to catch up with them, to talk to them and just, you know, thank them for, you know, being there so we could get them to...
Right now, though, he's dealing with a more private disaster. His Yeronga home has flooded.
The top floor is fine, so that's just fantastic.
He found out when he touched down on the Warrego Highway as the Grantham tragedy was unfolding. But his focus didn't shift.
The houses can be fixed, the property can be replaced, but it was the lives, and I was so focused on wanting people to get out because of what I saw at Grantham, you know. Just didn't want to have that happen here.
And his family doesn't mind a bit.
He's saved a lot of people and he's done a really good job, and I reckon he should keep doing it.
Sally Eels, 7 News.
Let's go back live to Brisbane now. David Koch from Sunrise joins us again. Now, David, you experienced Brisbane's 1974 disaster. From what you've seen today, how did it compare?
Look, it's certainly as devastating as 74 because there's just more in Brisbane now. It's been a booming city, there's more infrastructure, but yeah, I was only a teenager, but old enough to remember it. And one of the most dramatic parts of the 74 flood was when a big oil tanker that was being built at the Evans Deacon shipyard down the river here, around near where the Gateway Bridge is built at the moment. My dad was actually building it. We're on holidays on the Gold Coast, and he gets a call to say that the ship, which was about 3/4 built, had broken its moorings and was jammed across the mouth of the Brisbane River. And it was there for a day or so, and they were ready to blow the tanker just to clear the mouth of the Brisbane River. And seeing that tugboat with the boardwalk going down and collecting bridges on the way really reminded me of the devastation that we often forget about with these floods, that the sheer force of the debris going down can cause amazing damage. And when we were doing Sunrise this morning, just the dismasted yachts being swept away, containers, dumpsters, the whole lot were being dragged through there. The force of it is just unbelievable.
Interesting to think, though, that perhaps we've certainly taken some lessons from 1974 from the performance that we saw from some of the ports authorities on the Brisbane River today.
Yep. Well, I think not only the ports authorities, and I know we love to hate them, but the politicians, the emergency services, the amazing volunteer groups like the Red Cross are doing such amazing work. And while overseas countries have offered help and expertise, we've got it right here in Australia. And Mick Slater, who's being put in charge of the rebuilding, the reconstruction, you couldn't get a better bloke in the world for that job. I got to know him during the aftermath of Cyclone Larry when he was in charge of that and helping Colonel Peter Cosgrove. Just amazing expertise. So, you know, there's comfort in the fact that this state is in really good hands as it recovers.
He certainly sounds like he's eminently qualified for the job. Thanks very much, Koshi. We'll see you again tomorrow morning on Sunrise.
See you then, Chris.
We'll go to a break now. We'll be back with more of 7's continuous coverage of the Queensland's flood crisis in a moment.